Hello my loves, thank you for joining me on another video. My name is Ennie and I post solved, unsolved and missing persons cases here on my channel. If you enjoy this type of content, you're welcome. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Today we're going all the way to Bulgaria, where we shall be talking about how a young man mysteriously vanishes and there has been no trace of him since. This is the disappearance of Lars Mittank. Lars Mittank was born on the 19th of February 1986 near Berlin, Germany. So even though Lars had gotten missing in Bulgaria, he was originally from Germany. The family would later move to Man. I think Man was the original home of the Mittanks. They stayed in Man for a while, then they moved to Itzehoe. Itzehoe is in the Stenberg district, still in northern Germany. It is known as a quiet and peaceful town that families can live in. As the Mittanks settled in, Lars would fit right in. He quickly made friends and he was well liked by his classmates. He just had that type of personality that draws you in. He was sociable and he was well adjusted. He also excelled in school. He was a football fan and his favorite club was Werder Bremen. He supported them passionately. When he is not cheering up his football club, you will find him involved in one outdoor activity or the other. He was said to love outdoors so much as a teenager that he would go for fishing and diving expeditions. And on some weekends, he would go on excursions with his school friends. Sometimes they would go outside Germany just to explore and see how other people lived. Now, all these extracurricular activities didn't affect Lars as he progressed with his education. In fact, he was enrolled in the university and was studying to become an engineer. He wanted to become a power plant operator at a coal-fired power plant. So he studied hard, put in the work and graduated with good grades. Upon graduation, he found employment at the Wilhelmshaven power plant. His new job was quite a distance from home, so he packed up and left, but he kept in touch with his friends and family from time to time while away in another town working. In 2012, Lars received a call that his father had suffered a stroke. His situation was quite severe and he couldn't do things by himself anymore. He needed special care to function, so Lars, being the caring son that he was, would go home on weekends and in between his shifts of work so he could assist his mother to take care of his sick father. By this time, Lars was in a relationship and all seemed fine. He had a life, he was taking care of his father and from time to time still travel and engage himself in outdoor activities he enjoyed. Up until 2014, when Lars Mittank disappears under some unexplainable circumstances. So this is what happened. In the summer of 2014, Lars, who had been juggling being an engineer, a caregiver to his sick father, and a great partner to his girlfriend, decided to take a break. So he and 5 of his friends, that's 6 of them total, 3 were his childhood pals and the other 2 were friends he had made in school. They planned a trip to Varna in Bulgaria. I can't say exactly why they chose Varna, but his friends had made reservations, so they all packed and flew to Bulgaria on June the 29th, 2014. Upon arrival, he checked into Hotel Viva. This is a 4-star hotel not far from the beach. Lars was enjoying his vacation so much he would take a walk to the beach side and join in the game of football being played by some high school students and other local groups that often came to the beach to play football. 4 days into the vacation, this was now July the 3rd, there was a World Cup qualifiers match happening between Costa Rica and Netherlands, so the 6 friends decided to go watch the match and support their preferred team at the bar called the Mystery of the Golden Sands. Not having the jersey of the teams he was supporting that night, he decided that he was going to put on the jersey which he had, which was the jersey of his home club, the Werder Bremen football club. So while they were there at the bar watching the match, having drinks and cheering on their teams, a group of young men who were said to be high school graduates and fans of Bayern Munich picked fight with Lars and his friends. It's not clear what had started the argument in the first place, But it was likely because Lars was wearing the jersey of Werder Bremen and these guys were Bayern Munich supporters. They told Lars and his friends that it was easy to hire people to teach them a lesson if they refused to behave. But that threat wasn't taken seriously. If you've ever gone to watch a game like this, you will understand that there will always be bickering among fans, so it wasn't an exception in this case, and it wasn't a big deal, as the whole thing, that's the entire argument, ended after the match. The night ended on a positive note, and the six friends will hang out in the bar and pass time till about 4 a.m. thereabout. This was now on July the 4th. They were actually the last patrons to leave the mystery of the Golden Sands. So on their way back to their hotel, Tim and Paul said they were hungry, so they needed to buy food. So if you're not clear on who Tim and Paul are, these are just two of Lars's friends. That's out of the 6 people, there were 2 of them, Tim and Paul. So a little after 4 a.m., they suggested a group should pass by a nearby McDonald's and get something to eat. Lars wasn't a man for fast food. He loved his athletic look, so he always watched his diet and ate right. He would turn down the McDonald's invite. Then he tells his friend, you know what, I'm just going to walk ahead of you guys. You can catch up with me when you're done. They weren't going to stay long anyways. It was just to get food and take it to the hotel to eat. The hotel was about 1 kilometer by foot from the McDonald's, so Lars starts trekking alone, going back to the hotel until he comes to a spot which was quite secluded, and there he gets jumped by a gang. Some reports says this group who attacked Lars were locals, others said they were Russians. Whoever they were, Lars was outnumbered and he took quite a beating. He, however, was able to escape before the assault degenerated into something else, but he took a heavy blow to the left side of his head, just by his ear, and as a result, he had a torn eardrum. So he runs away from these people and returns to the Hotel Viva to sleep it off, thinking it wasn't anything serious. By this time, he hadn't known that he had a torn eardrum, but the ear was a bit painful. After a few hours of sleep, he wakes up at noon. That's still the afternoon of July the 4th. And the first thing he does was to put a call across to his girlfriend back in Germany. He narrates the story of what had happened to him to her, how he was attacked on the way from watching football the night before, and he tells her that he believes that the gang that attacked him was hired by the Epstein Bayern Munich fans that had argued with him and his friends at the mystery of the Golden Sands bar. His girlfriend told him to please go and get his ear checked out by a doctor, since he complained it was a bit painful, but Lars told her it was a weekend and he might not get an ENT, and that was where the conversation ended. That night, he joined his friends for a night out and forgot about his aching ear. The next day, he didn't do anything about it either. He just kept ignoring it until it was time for them to fly back home. The vacation was over, and on the 7th of July, the friends checked out of their hotel by noon and they were about to head to the airport to catch their flight back to Germany. It was then it dawned on Lars that with the way his ear was hurting, if it were to be something more serious and he flies with it, his hearing would be damaged permanently. So he calls a cab that takes him to a doctor's office. That was sometime between 12 to 1 p.m. The doctor Lars saw confirmed that his eardrum was ruptured, so he advises him to reschedule his flight as it will not be wise to fly on a plane with a ruptured eardrum. He then refers Lars to the St. Anna's Hospital in Varna for further treatment. His friends were back at the hotel waiting for him, so instead of going straight to St. Anna's Hospital, he made the decision to go back to the hotel to meet his friends. Later that afternoon, at about 5 p.m., he tells his friends to go on ahead and fly home without him. He would join them later after receiving treatment for his ruptured eardrum. They wanted to wait for him. They insisted that they would wait for him so that they could all travel back together to Germany the same way they had traveled together to Bulgaria, but he insisted, so they accepted. And at about 8 p.m. that night, a shuttle bus picked up his 5 friends from the hotel. He then hails a cab and goes to the hospital to get his ear checked out. By 8:40 p.m., he was seen by a specialist at St. Anna's Hospital. But sometime during the consultation, the ENT laughed at Lars because Lars was getting frustrated that the doctor would not speak English. This doctor insisted on speaking his local language, which Lars didn't understand, So there was a bit of a communication gap there, but at the end of it all, Lars walked away with a prescription for 500 milligrams of the antibiotic Ceprozil. Now, Lars goes out the hospital, and outside he still meets the same cabbie that had brought him about 40 minutes earlier. So he enters the cab and tells the driver to take him to the nearest pharmacy. The pharmacy they went to didn't have what he was looking for, so he requested he be taken to another one. Now it's about 5 minutes past 10 p.m. when they finally find a pharmacy, and he gets the Ceprozil 500 milligrams that he was prescribed. It was already late at night and he needed a place to stay, having already checked out of the hotel he and his friends had used. It was difficult to find a cheap hotel as it was summertime and almost all affordable hotels were booked. But the cabman ended up taking him to a hotel in a not so upscale area called Hotel Color. He exits the cab, pays him, and before going into the hotel, he decided to purchase drinking water from a store he saw across the hotel. This was at about 10 minutes past 10 p.m. Soon as he made that decision, he changed his mind almost immediately as he noticed some sketchy individuals hovering around that area where he wanted to buy water. So instead, he goes into the hotel and checks in using his credit card, after which he heads to the hotel bar instead to get water. Now it was about 11 p.m. and he takes his Ceprozil antibiotics. A few minutes after 11 p.m., he then calls his mother and asks her to recharge his phone with call credit as he was low on airtime. After this, he then proceeds to tell her everything that had happened during the vacation, from the arrival to the bar incident, and how he got his eardrums ruptured, and how the ENT specialist at St. Anna's had treated him poorly and laughed at him. His mother Sandra was quite disturbed and told him she will file a claim with foreign health insurance to secure a patient transport that will bring him back home to Germany. Lars was like, okay, go ahead, do that while I wait. A few minutes later, she calls him back to say the health insurance claim had failed. At this point, she couldn't help but notice that something was going on with her son, because he told her that he needed to leave at all costs because something wasn't right about Hotel Color. He couldn't say exactly what it was, but something off was happening about the hotel according to him. He then tells his mother Sandra to cancel his credit cards because, according to him, when he had checked in earlier, the clerk at the front desk had copied his credit card. Now Sandra, his mother, checks with the banks to be sure that if she blocks or cancels this credit card, she could easily unblock it later on, but she was told if she blocks it, it will be final. So she in turn tells Lars, but Lars still insisted that she cancels the card, saying he had enough cash on him to get by. Now, since Lars was insisting on leaving Hotel Color that night, knowing it was late and with no other place to lodge, Sandra knew she needed to get him out of there as soon as possible, and the only solution she could come up with at that time was to book him a bus out of Varna for the following night at 11:30 p.m., which would be July the 8th. She tells her son to try and get some sleep so he could be relaxed for the journey by bus the next day, and they said their good nights. But shortly before it was 12 a.m., Lars would call his mother again. This time, whatever was happening to him had intensified. He was more paranoid and kept going on and on about something not being right about Hotel Color where he was staying. He would speak in low tones like someone was listening on their phone conversations. He tells his mother he was being watched. Then he ends the call abruptly, saying he needed to get out of there. Then sometime between 2:30 and 3 a.m., he called his mother again, but this time it wasn't because something was wrong with the hotel. He was whispering to her that he's being followed by 4 men who were after his life. He sounded very, very frightened. Then he hangs up again. At about 6 minutes past 3 a.m., he then texts his mother asking, Ceprozil 500, what is it? By 3:15, he repeats the same message again. That is him asking twice what the medication he was prescribed was. At this point, his mother is like, I need to get my son out of Varna right away. I can't wait for the bus trip. So she books Lars a flight out of Varna airport for 4:20 p.m. that day. A couple of hours later, at about 5 a.m., Lars hails the cab that takes him to Varna Airport. There was another passenger in the cabin, a female. She would later say she noticed Lars' pupils were severely dilated when he joined her in the cab. Well, after arriving at the airport later that morning, as he waited for his flight, Lars asked the man at the terminal how he would receive money, and the man explains to him how to send and receive money through Western Union banking system. Lars then calls his mother again and asks her to please send him money via Western Union. His mother Sandra at this point was confused. She was wondering what on earth was going on, as she had never used Western Union before and Lars knew that. However, she agrees to send him 500 euros. Then she proceeds to give him the flight information, that's his own flight information. She also told him to check with the airport medical office to be sure he could fly with his eardrums like that. And if they say he couldn't fly, he should then just wait for the bus she had initially booked for. Lars tells his mother that the way he looked unkempt and disheveled, he might not be allowed to fly or ride in a bus, to which his mother said he should go into the airport bathrooms and fix himself up, get clean, so that won't be an issue. Now his mother goes on to send the 500 euros by Western Union, and she calls to tell Lars she has sent it, but what she could hear from the other end were just whispers. In her mind, she's thinking, why on earth is he whispering? Then the call goes off. This was around 9 a.m. on July the 8th. She tries calling back again and again, and Lars never picks up. This was the last time Sandra would hear from her son. Now, at that time she was trying to reach her son, Lars had headed to the airport clinic where he met a certain Dr. Kostov. The doctor goes over his medical records, checks his temperature, which was just a bit over 37 degrees Celsius, so he was clear to fly. He gives him an eardrop and tries to give him pills, but Lars refuses. He asks Lars to sign a waiver, which he did, and then Lars asks to use the restroom afterward, saying he'll be right back. Now, instead of going to the restroom as he said, at around 10 a.m., Lars goes out the airport clinic, out the airport terminal, and runs away from the airport. He runs as if he was being chased. He climbs a fence and lands in the sunflower field around the Bulgaria Highway S2. This was the last time anyone would say they truly saw Lars Mittank. Back in Germany, it had been hours since Sandra had communicated with Lars. She was worried and needed to know that her son was okay. So she contacted the consulates in Varna and speaks with a certain Miss Metrova. This was at about 11 a.m. She explained the situation to Miss Metrova and she told her she would find out more information and let her know. At about 12 noon, she returned Sandra's call and informed Sandra of Lars' bizarre escape from the airport, also informing her that Lars had left all his belongings, all his luggage behind, and no one has seen him since. The next day, Tuesday, July 9th, the missing persons report is filed back in Germany, and the power plant where Lars worked hired a private detective and a lawyer based out of Varna to commence investigation into the disappearance of their staff. Now, Bulgarian officials brought in Sandra Mittank to show her the CCTV footage recorded at Varna Airport. It showed how Lars arrived that morning up to the time he ran out of the airport. Personally, I got to watch clips that had been released to the public. I must say it's quite haunting, seeing him walking casually, then later on running out like someone or something was chasing him, then seeing him run to the road, then into the field. It's kind of like mysterious. After his disappearance, there were lots of speculations about this case. Was he just being paranoid, or there was really something sinister going on that only Lars was privy to? Some say he must have gotten himself involved in something illegal. What of the men who had assaulted him? Who were they, and why did they attack him? Was it random, or did they actually know him? Did the antibiotics given to him for his ear have anything to do with his behavior? After all, there are side effects like hallucinations that comes to taking this medication in some individuals. Then some people pointed fingers at Dr. Kostov, the one who had last seen Lars at the airport clinic. This was majorly because his story kept changing. It wasn't consistent at all. When he was questioned about who exactly was in that examination room when Lars ran out, His first version was that a man in an airport uniform unexpectedly entered the office while Lars was being treated, and this was what first made Lars to ask to leave. In his second version, he said it was an airport laborer that had walked into the examination room, not an airline employee. Then in his third version, he claimed not to know who the intruder was and that he did not recognize him as either an airline employee or a casual worker. When investigators tried to locate this person, they were introduced to a guy whom they would later on find out was not even in Bulgaria at the time of this incident. Now you see why some people were looking at him sideways. His stories were just not adding up. But well, it was later ruled out that he had anything to do with Lars's disappearance, so that was that for Dr. Kostov. Since his disappearance over the years, there have been some supposed sightings of Lars in Bulgaria and even in Canada and Brazil, but all these have been checked out and ruled out. As far as we know, it's been 8 years. This is 2022 and Lars Mittank is still a missing person. So my loves, that is all I have for you today. Subscribe to my channel and like the video if you like this type of content. Until next video, bye.